So today we're looking at the Soundbrenner Pulse. It's a wearable, smart, vibrating metronome that you can hook up to an app and do all sorts of interesting things with. So here it is right here. It's kind of cool how you can take the actual metronome part off the watch. You could attach it to your music stand. You could do all sorts of things with it, I guess. Attach it to any part of your body. And it's kind of neat. That turns. I guess that's probably going to help with setting the metronome. So next I'm going to set it up and we'll test it out. So I'll do a review in just a second, but I just wanted to show you kind of the setup here. So this is the pretty sweet charging station. It's magnetic, so it kind of goes right into place, and then it charges your device. And then I have the app open here, which is connected to it. So the cool thing about this is that you just tap it, and then the sound is coming out of my phone, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But it links up with your phone really nicely, and you can have multiple metronome or pulses working with the same app, which is pretty cool. And you can change the time signature and the note value and the speed at which it, the tempo of the beat. You can also just turn this. It's buzzing right now, just in case you can't tell. Has a little accent, which is kind of cool on the beat. And then you turn it off. So it's just like a tap on and off, which is pretty cool. And then you, of course, attach it to the watch bracelet or the arm bracelet or ankle bracelet or wherever else you want to put this device. So let me talk about the Pulse a little bit. What I'll do is I'll do a quick summary. I'll do some pros and some cons of the device. And then I'll talk about who the competition is. And I'll also talk about some useful situations where the Pulse could come in particularly handy. And then I'll just follow up with a little mention of the Core model, which is a newer model that they're coming out with soon. So, as you can see, my preferred location was my right arm, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The main thing here is that I think it's a pretty super cool, innovative, and interesting product. Very useful for some people in some situations, but it's not going to be for everyone, of course. So some of the pros of this device. Cool design, innovative ideas, and it's fun to use. Just tapping it and getting it going. It's super simple and fun and very usable. The app and the tutorial setup for the app is fantastic. It guides you through all the options and using the device, and it works really, really well. It kind of senses when you've done something, so it can tell if you understand the directions or not. So one of the great tutorials that I've ever used. So a fantastic app and tutorial. The app also works great in terms of usability as a metronome. So you can change the accent of the beat. You can change the tempo, of course, either through the app on your phone by using the dial, or you can just adjust the tempo with the dial on the device. But you can also change the time signature, the beat value. You can do a ton of other things. You can change the color of the lights. I went with blue because I just liked it. You can turn off the vibrations and leave the lights on. Turn off the lights, leave the vibrations on. You can do all sorts of things. There's a ton of settings on the device, so you can check that out. You can also create playlists where you set the tempos for your different songs, tempos and key signatures for different songs, so that it's all set up for you for rehearsal or practice. The device itself will sync with 5 other Pulse watches. So you could have 5 people all wearing the watch feeling the same beat at the same time through one app or one phone. So that's super useful, and we'll talk about that in a bit when we talk about who this device is really for. The vibrations are adjustable from weak to strong, thank goodness, and also the duration of the vibration. So I like it on the weakest setting and the shortest vibration setting. This kind of keeps it minimal in terms of how much you feel it. When I turned it to powerful, it was like a little too much on my arm or my wrist. So that it's a great thing that they allow you to adjust the power of the vibrations. One question you're probably going to ask right off the bat is, do I like the vibrations? Do I like how it vibrates on me? And I'll mention that really quickly. When I had it on my wrist, the vibrations are just too intense for me. Like, I'm trying to do these delicate movements in my left hand. I found it very strange, and I might grow used to that after time. They say it on the box, like you probably have to give it quite a while before you become really used to it because you just haven't done it before. I've been playing for 25 years and I've never used one before, so it's a little different, right? But I did find I'm trying to play in this nice relaxed way. I don't want this stimulus in one part of my body. So I really preferred putting it on my right arm. It just kind of separated it from my hand quite a bit. I found that much better. I didn't want it right next to my hand where I'm doing these sensitive movements. Depends what kind of musician you are. Classical guitar is very small movements, very delicate. If you're a drummer or something, or electric guitars, it might not feel quite as intense. Also, if you're amplified, there's lots of vibrations going on anyway. But anyway, like I said, I preferred it right on my arm. But actually, the vibrations feel pretty good, and it could be useful for some students sometimes. There are occasions in my lessons when I'm teaching that I'll reach over and just tap a student's shoulder just to give them a tactile sense of the beat, right? So that is kind of interesting. It could be an interesting teaching tool. I don't know if I'd recommend using it all the time, because I think you should be listening with your ears to the pulse and learning to play with a normal metronome. I still think that's one thing that everyone should have, is just a normal sounding metronome, like with the app on this device. But the vibrations were better than I thought, and I quite liked feeling the beat in that way. So it's just another cool accessory or tool, or another way of exploring all of this kind of timekeeping ideas. I actually didn't mind it either when taking it off the strap completely and just placing this on my leg, just where it can sit. I don't think you can see that necessarily, but just putting it on my leg and letting it vibrate there. I could feel it kind of right on my leg, and I don't have to strap it onto my body. I quite liked that. So don't think of it just as a watch or a strap device. I think just as a little tiny device like this, it's pretty useful. So I was surprised by that, and I also really was glad that the straps are so easy just to take off of it, and you can just put this anywhere. You can put it on your shoulder if you want, or on top of your head or something like that. The tap controls are great. I don't want to get bogged down with technology when I'm playing music, so this kind of just tapping it and adjusting the tempo is really great. You can also tap 3 times and it'll match the speed at which you tap. And so you can set precise tempos for what you're doing. So they're super easy to use, and that's really helpful. I love this twist style. It's really great. Just like my normal metronome, I like just being able to twist something to change the tempo. Really easy. Decent price, $99. That's pretty good for a dedicated tool. And that's an important fact, that it's a dedicated tool for musicians. We'll talk about that in a second when we talk about Apple, the Apple Watches and stuff like that. But this is a dedicated tool for musicians, so a lot of the options are geared towards musicians. The other thing, it works with all the major DAWs for recording, editing, and producing live performances. So that's really interesting that it'll sync up with your DAW, and you can use it along with that. So that's another very specific thing that's geared towards musicians very specifically. The last thing on my list of things I like is I like pretty lights. It looks pretty cool, right? I mean, it's fun, and it looks nice. In terms of its size, it's a little bit big, but don't think about that too much. I'm pretty small and I have very small wrists, so it looks pretty big on my wrist, but on other people, it wouldn't be as large. I think the core model that's coming out next is going to be a little bit smaller, so that'll be interesting. So some cons of the device. Don't take any of these too seriously because I think it's a really cool accessory, but we'll talk about this. My main complaint about the device is that it doesn't emit sound. It doesn't actually make the sound of a metronome. Now, that's not what it's for, right? It's called the Vibrating Pulse metronome, but it doesn't actually make the sound of a normal metronome unless you have your phone. So when your phone's synced up, as you saw before, it creates a nice little tick. So with your phone, it works great as a regular metronome. You can turn the vibration off if you want and just listen to the tick of the metronome, or just use their app. But sometimes I don't want to have my phone out, and I thought it would be a really cool option on this if it just made the normal metronome sound, so I could use it as a normal metronome, just like clicking away. Especially as an acoustic guitarist, as a classical musician, I just want a normal metronome. I don't want to carry my normal metronome around and this one. That said, I will say, who doesn't have their phone around all the time these days? I pretty much always have my phone with me, so it's kind of like a weird thing. I do always have my phone around, so it is always kind of there. But I guess it would need speakers of its own in order to do that. Plus, I did notice that, when you take it off the watch strap, let me take it off here, and you place it on any kind of surface, it makes quite a bit of sound, but it does make some sound, so you could just have it around and put it on a table or something like that. It might dance off the table at some point, but you could use it in that way. But that was one of my main complaints. It just doesn't make the normal metronome sound. The other thing is you have to kind of question, do you want something that vibrates on you? And of course, if you buy this product, yes, you do. And there's reasons why you might want it to vibrate, such as you don't want it to make sound, or you want to sync across a whole ensemble group, but not hear an annoying click sound. The cool thing about it is that you can feel the pulse on your body. So that's really interesting. That's innovative. I think it's something that is definitely of interest. When I was playing along, I'm not very used to it yet, but you can really feel the pulse. That's kind of cool. And you can turn the vibrations off if you want. And as I said before, you can adjust the strength of the vibrations. So that's also a good option. But personally, I don't know if I really need something to vibrate like that. I like using a normal clicking metronome. But this will provide you with both, right? With the app, you can either just hear the sound, or you can have the vibration, or you can have both going at the same time, which for some people might be of big interest. And of course, what if you don't want it to make a sound? And we'll talk about that in a second. One annoying thing I thought is that because it doesn't have a screen, when I adjust the tempo, I don't actually know what the tempo is, unless I have the app out. The app tells you exactly what the tempo is, but if you're not using the app, I can't tell what tempo it is. Small point, I think on the newer version, the core, you probably will be able to tell what the beat per minute is, so that might solve that issue for me. The last thing I wanted to say in the con section is just do I want more technology when I'm playing an acoustic instrument? No, I don't. But at the same time, this is pretty simple. You just tap it. It's so easy and so usable that, that's not more complicated than my metronome. On the metronome, I do have to turn it on and do the dial. So on this, you do the tap and the dial. So, not really a complaint. So who's the competition for this device? That's the real question. There are apps for your phone that make sound and they vibrate your phone and flash light and things like that. And some of those apps are even free. So that's pretty stiff competition. But a phone is pretty bulky, and like you don't always want to strap a phone to your body. And like, what if your phone starts ringing or something? Like, you don't necessarily always want your phone, although, like I said, you need the app. But nevertheless, a phone is not a dedicated tool for musicians. So there's that to be said, right? Phones are also more expensive. $99 is not that much money to pay for a dedicated tool for a musician. Apple Watches are an interesting one. Apple Watches are small, they surf the internet, they check your email. They also come with metronome apps that vibrate and make sound and flash. So they kind of cover everything that I want out of them. But Apple iWatches cost $500 to $1,000, and they're not dedicated tools for musicians. So I don't know if you can adjust the strength of the vibration and whatnot. But also, I'm just kind of sick of giving Apple my money. So like buying an Apple Watch after having a phone and a tablet and a desktop computer. So yeah, this is a dedicated tool for musicians, so that shouldn't be overlooked. Now, I really consider this to be a cool accessory and not an essential tool, because my metronome is still going to be my essential practice tool. But there's so many things that my metronome can't do that this can. So it's not really a fair comparison. But like, I imagine that everyone who buys this is already going to have one of these. They're going to have a metronome already. Like, who doesn't have a metronome? So if you buy this, it's going to be your cool accessory that you use at certain times, but you're probably going to have a metronome anyway. So some useful situations for the Pulse. Amplified bands, for sure. If you're an amplified band and you don't want to like have a huge click track going, or you're playing live, then yeah, everyone can have one of these and you can all be in sync. I'm not sure that's actually that great, because a lot of the time in bands, like you don't want to like be totally play like a metronome, but it could be really useful for in rehearsals. Definitely in rehearsals, like trying to just keep the beat really solid, or for some types of music that you just want a metronomic beat. Other things, or like maybe like it's a recording session and you can't have a tick going, so everyone has a vibrating thing on instead. Or it's late at night at your apartment and you're plugged into your electric guitar and you don't want something ticking away. Another interesting thing is like for abstract situations, like my trio played this piece called September a little while ago, and essentially we never play on the same beat together, and it was incredibly hard to either we needed a conductor or we needed to like do crazy gestures to each other for like 10 minutes because it was so hard to keep track of the beat. This could have really helped in that situation, and maybe we would have even used it. It would have been a little bit weird to have a metronome going during a performance, but nevertheless, it could have been useful for that abstract situation. Or another situation is like when performers scatter around the hall and you can't hear each other very well. Maybe this would be very useful for that particular type of like abstract music. So the last thing I just want to say is that they're coming out with a new model called the Core, and that interests me a lot because it comes with the vibrating metronome, but also has a magnetic tuner, so it can be a tuner. It also has a decibel meter, so that's really interesting. Plus, it's an actual watch that you can wear and it tells the time. And it's not that expensive. I don't think you can like surf the internet on it and stuff, so it's not an Apple Watch. But I think it's like it's gonna check off a lot more boxes in terms of like having a watch and a tuner and like a decibel meter. Those are all really interesting things and great things. So and probably as a music teacher, if you're gonna wear a watch, having like a clock on it and all these other options is going to be really useful. So I think that's like definitely a move in the right direction. It looks a little smaller and more styling too. And I assume that it has a little screen on it, although I'm not sure what that's going to be like. But it's in like the development stage. I think it's coming out really soon though. So I imagine like their app could increase the functionality of the device as they work on it. So I'm really interested in the Core. I think that's going to be a real step up and pretty much eliminate over half of the cons that I kind of found, even though there's not that many cons. But I'm very interested in that Core device. So make sure you check out the review that I posted on the website that has a little bit more information than this video, and also links to the product. where you can buy it, where you can learn more about it, and where you can learn about that new core model that they're coming out with.